Hello, welcome to the HR Strategy in the Hot Seat podcast. My name's Anwen Bottois, I'm your host, and I'm the founder of Purple Sky Consulting. I'm a leadership promotion specialist, and I also have a bit of a side hustle where I focus on development of HR leaders. So as the title of the podcast suggests, this is going to be all about HR strategy and how we can help HR professionals to consider the strategic elements of HR in more depth. Now let's get started with this episode. Hi Fiona, it's really, really lovely to have you on the podcast.
Thanks so much, Anwen. I am delighted to be on the HR Strategy Hot Seat podcast.
Yes, fantastic. So why don't you do a little introduction for our listeners?
Certainly. I'm Fiona Kearns. I'm a business psychologist. I specialise in working with organisations to guide leaders and managers, often mistrained professionals like scientists, solicitors, accountants, engineers, business psychologists, on high performance so they can create top performing teams and high impact work environments.
Fantastic. I love all those different professions as well that you're involved in. I love that. Tell us a little bit about you then, more personally, and your background a little bit.
My background is tech and telecoms. So I've worked in that sector for many, many, many years. Very enjoyable, very fast moving, really, really liked it. I retrained about 10 years ago to be a business psychologist because I've always been fascinated by people and leadership and organization, and also because I had experienced challenges within my career, no surprise. I'm particularly interested in leadership around women. That's always been something I'm really, really keen on. And I wanted to bring that into organizations. I love working with small to medium enterprises. So companies who are, under the 250 employee mark, I get the opportunity to come in, understand the challenges that they're experiencing, and work really closely with them to come up with training, coaching, mentoring, consulting to help them succeed in what they do. Because, MDs, founders, they've got this amazing vision. They really care about it, but they find that they're hampered by, inverted commas, people problems and people issues. And it's just so enjoyable to help them with that.
That piece around the people problems. We're definitely going to get into that shortly. But it's so interesting, isn't it, in terms of the opportunities there are with people. And it's difficult, I think, sometimes when people get stuck in it being a problem rather than actually seeing the opportunity of it from a leadership perspective, which, maybe that's me with a slightly glass half full attitude towards it. But there's something really joyful about being a leader and helping others to succeed, isn't there?
I agree with that in full. And I also think that this idea that there are people problems, I also think it's presented that way, or people view it that way because they're struggling. They've never been trained. They can't understand exactly what's going on. They're tired, they're stressed, they're trying to run an organization, and all they can see is, why does this person not do what I specifically want them to do? I mean, that's the start of the conversation. And, you just have to dig a little bit underneath that. And so many things come up on that. And there's so much more understanding that's required, and way more conversations around what's going on as well. And this is a theme with whatever issues, challenges organizations may have with people. My go-to point is, we need to be having more conversations with each other to understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved your point there before around technical or specialist people all of a sudden having to do something that they've never done before. And I always find it so gobsmacking, but then also remember what it was like when I was in-house and we would just be busy moving from one thing to another and sometimes filling gaps and being excited about promoting somebody, but then really not really considering the fact that actually they've never actually done this job before. Like, do you want to go to a GP who's never been a doctor before? Do you want to go to a dentist who's never done any training or done any learning around how to do that thing? And I'm not saying that they're doctors or dentists, but quite honestly, why doesn't the same theory apply to how we put people into leadership roles, recognizing that actually this is a different job. This is a job element of what they are doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, in some ways, it's the classic situation. You're the best scientist. Oh, you're promoted and now you have a team. You're the best salesperson. Congratulations, you're promoted. You're the best solicitor. Oh, congratulations, you're achieving, you're promoted and you've got a team of people. And people think that just because you're clever, even just because you're nice and good, that you can manage people. And you can, but you have to be skilled with that. But I see another layer with that because there is that phenomenon, the accidental manager, sure. But the other layer I see in working with professionals. So let's take the example of scientist, but it applies to all the professions. Yes, in order to advance your career, you get promoted, you usually get team management, leadership. That's great. We want it. But it's like us professionals have been mistrained because we are told, in what is required to be a great scientist, to be a great solicitor, to be a great accountant, to be a great psychologist. But those things aren't the things that actually give us success at work. And in some ways, we have been mistrained around that. Our profession mistrains us when it comes to leadership and ultimate success. And it's so much fun because in organizations, I just see that there's so many times that people think, all I need to do is to be the best scientist, the best engineer, the best psychologist. And we know, we actually know this, that is not what it's all about. But still, people, it's so ingrained in us that we struggle with it. And helping individuals and organizations unpick that it's radical. And I would argue, that also, I think it helps people in their personal life as well, that we have to look beyond the little blinkered lens that we've been given in order that we get what we ultimately want. And it's just a bit more broader. And yeah, I just enjoy opening people's eyes and helping them see a broader spectrum as well. And that is one of the joys of the job that I do.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think because we're both in that space of working with leaders in different areas and different and types, it's so interesting when you're working with people that, this isn't about fixing the problems with leaders. This is about helping your high performing people to be excellent leaders, And I work with some brilliantly high performing, well regarded talent who've never done some of these things before. And therefore, it's difficult, or they're not quite sure how to approach it, or they're dealing with the peer who used to be part of their team and now is somebody who reports to them. And these are all things that are really difficult to navigate for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the lens of this being a mindset shift and a skill shift in terms of what people need to do, and a bit of unlearning. I put it under maybe those three categories. That's it. I genuinely believe that we can all become good leaders as a base level.
Yeah.
I think, to be like a truly great leader, maybe there is a bit of art in there. But for the rest of it, I think you can lean on the skill and just thinking about things much more differently and unpicking some of your professional training.
Yeah, totally. Wonderful. Thank you for that. So, Fiona, what would you like to put in the HR strategy hot seat today?
I am putting low-level conflict in the HR strategy hot seat today.
Love that. So tell us a little bit more about what that means, what's going on with it, and why you think we need to be putting a bit of a microscope on it.
I put this low-level conflict as a serious red flag in any organization because it's overlooked. Like, think of what we're dealing with. We're all professionals and we're polite and we're smart and we don't want to be rude to people. And that's part of the culture that we're operating in. Different cultures do it differently, sure. But, particularly in the UK market, think about it, we're just super polite, and we queue up for things and so on. So we do all that. And so what we think is being polite is actually avoidance. And what happens is we allow people to get away with things. We tell ourselves we're being polite, but we're not. We're avoiding it. Let's be real. We are.
Yes.
And it's because we don't want to have the difficult conversation. I don't want to tell you, oh, Anwen, you've done something, or somebody has reported to me you've done something a bit small. For example, I invited you to a meeting and you said, oh, Fiona, sorry, I won't be attending any meetings if you don't have an agenda. So, come back to me when you have an agenda and I'll deal with it. I like this one because it's something I play with in one of my workshops about power dynamics. So on the face of that could be true. You're a busy person, you're very successful. You don't have time to faff around. Sure, I get it. On the other end of that, it's a bit passive aggressive as well. There's a bit of a power play in there, and I get it. And say I report that to my manager and I go, yeah, I want to feedback that, this person, Anwen, said she refused to meet with me because of this. And your manager goes, yeah, Fiona, come on. Yeah, have an agenda for the meeting. It's pretty basic productivity and all of that. And so say that doesn't get addressed because it's a little small thing, and sure, yeah, I need an agenda and all of that. But imagine if you were doing that in an organization to lots of people and it doesn't get surfaced, or it could be any small thing. Instead of perhaps me or my manager is speaking with you about it. Admin, oh gosh, it was so interesting. Fiona mentioned to me about, not being able to come to her meeting because she didn't have an agenda. We could have a conversation about that and you could outline what's going on. Yeah, I'm really stressed. And this is about the 15th meeting that Fiona invited me to. She's going to waste my time. She talks the whole time. We never get anything done. There's no actions. And quite frankly, I'm far too busy to be messing around with this. And so you uncover a whole other piece, but it's all the small things. And the other piece with this is this builds up. It builds up and it builds up and it builds up. And then, it ends up being something much larger than it needs to be. You were having a bad day. I was having a bad day. It was, it can be lots of different things going on. But this is a bit that gets pushed under. And the other thing with it as well, that sometimes it gets escalated to the line manager instead of dealing with the person directly. And again, that builds it up instead of where I maybe could have just said, oh, fair enough, Anwen, I'll make sure I have an agenda in future. And then can we do that? I understand that. Now, you might do something else and there's broader pieces with it, but it's just the ignoring it. It's the pretending it's not there. There is friction. There is energy in the room and maybe justified, but we skip over it. Why are we ignoring? Why are we not talking about these things? And that frustrates me. But more than that, I see this as particular frustration for lower level managers and team members. This is where I see it more. And then we have all this pushback against more senior managers. They're not doing this, they're not doing that. And it ends up being much bigger than it is. There's aggravation. Maybe there's gossip in the company. All of these are associated items. And my view on this is, let's have conversations with the people. I have a conversation with you, Anwen, about I'm going to do that with the meeting in future. Is there anything else I can do to, help you come to these meetings? Because I really need your input. And then you can tell me, Fiona, your meetings are too long. I can really only spare 15 minutes. If you can bring me in just at the segment where it's to do with my area of specialty, that would help me tremendously. Or even my manager. Oh, Anwen, what was going on? Again, referring to my earlier point, you can explain what I'm doing wrong, and my manager can give me feedback, or you give me. Let's have more conversations.
More
people.
conversations. I love that.
Let's have more conversations. Let's talk about these things, and we can do it politely. There's so many ways of doing it politely, but this is it drives me absolutely up the wall.
It's so interesting because there's just fundamental human behavior going on here, isn't it? In terms of I can't possibly point out the obvious. I can't put, I'm choosing to take offense rather than lean into whatever is going on here. That happens in every single part of our lives, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Of course it does. If you're listening to this, you're going, my goodness. I mean, this is basic common sense, people. And that may be true, and we are not doing it. And it's like so many things. We all know how to get fit. We all know how to be slim and healthy and all of that. But there's a difference between knowing and doing. And it's the discomfort so many times in taking the action, in having the conversation. I don't want to raise it. And sometimes we can also feel safer. I can just talk about the other person and be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know what the other person did to me. And it's always a bit more dramatic because that's how we roll. But these are fundamentals, but it's about reminding people to do the fundamentals and get people into the vein of doing it.
And I love that kind of positioning of more conversations. And there's something really interesting there in terms of the quality of relationships that exist within the organizations and what that means for the ease for people to go into those open conversations. What are your thoughts in terms of how that plays out in the organization?
In terms of the ease of having the conversations?
Yeah, or the impacts of, when that doesn't exist.
I think it has a massive impact. I paused because I felt I had to question whether I was being a bit dramatic with this.
No,
I really feel it has a massive impact. And again, this comes back to the pretending and all of that. But if we can't have straightforward conversations, how can we collaborate? How can we work together? How can I tell you, that you're out of line, you're out of order, just quickly, for goodness sake, Anwen, wash up the cup after yourself. Even just these little things.
Kitchen wars.
Yeah, there doesn't need to be a written report on people not washing up their cups if people are able to just say it. But of course, if you can't say it or the environment is that you can't say it, then there needs to be 15 emails going around about people not washing up their things and these these petty things, but they become very serious.
Yes,
and
they do.
These smaller things get escalated. So what happens is that you are not collaborating, you're not talking to people, you're not getting the extra information, everything's formal, it's slowed down. The reality for an organization is less productivity, less profitability, and the good people don't want to stay in that environment. That's the reality. If you're a good person, you're very capable, you can find someplace else to go to. And the flip side of that is then you are keeping the less good people in the organization. And what does that mean for people? It's low morale. It spirals downwards. And who wants to go into that? We want to enjoy our work. We want to deliver. We want to make an impact. We want to have a bit of fun with our colleagues. We want to do great work as well. And we want to work hard. All of those things are ticking, but we don't want to come into that. I don't want to have to deal with this carry on. It just brings everything down.
It's too much, isn't it? And it drives more of it. Whenever it's in existence, all I've ever seen or heard, or you've heard about those stories of those toxic teams who keep like causing genuine displeasure between themselves because nobody's willing to have a really honest, direct conversation. And when it's been happening for years, how do you unpick something like that? Where do you start?
If you want me to answer that question, you start at the top. You do. But there also has to be some hard decisions in that environment. Like, that situation is pretty horrible, and you have to come in that you mean business. But what can often happen is, because somebody is viewed as performing, they get away with the bad behavior. And it is like that concept of the bad apple in the barrel, and it just spreads the toxicity around the place. And I've seen that in my own career. I remember working with a very senior person in the organization who used information and their expertise just to keep all the information to themselves. And whereas previously our previous person was like, anything you want, like, we'll tell you, give you the details. I mean, it was their area of expertise. I was never going to become that expert. I didn't need to be. I just needed to understand what was happening, potential blockages, where we were at, and all of that. And it had such a massive impact on me in terms of how that came through. But that was across the organization. And even though that person had a very negative impact on lots of people around them, they were senior enough, and the CEO knew, was aware, and was satisfied. And also, because of that strategy that he employed, in some ways they had the CEO over a barrel as well, because they were the only person that had the information, but again, not wishing to tackle that person. And it's a form of corporate cowardice, is what I'm going to call it. And I think, and I really think that was something that really ruined the organization. But again, I was not the CEO at that time, so.
And it's so dangerous, isn't it? Because it does happen at all levels, and the impact of it can be larger or smaller in different ways. So that point around better conversations and helping and I think that has to be the point, doesn't it? Helping everybody in the organization have better conversations and more real, honest, clear conversations. How can an organization take action on that?
I think there's role modeling. I do a lot of work with organizations in terms of giving and receiving feedback and literally providing a framework. And honestly, sometimes I think, are you overdoing this, Fiona? But you never are, because there are never enough opportunities to give and receive feedback. But the differences I see in organizations that doing that is that it's a muscle, and they get used to doing it. And sure, it's still a bit uncomfortable to have the difficult conversations, the awkward conversations, but you get into doing it, and the more you do it, the more you get to do it. So I would say in that scenario is start doing it, start equipping people to do it, and you pick your battles as well. I don't think you have to fight everything. You don't have to pick up on everything. And it's more around, you look for patterns. At the 12th time that Anwen says, I'm not coming to a meeting, there's a pattern. Being a bit facetious there, obviously. But there's a piece here. What organizations need to do is they need to role model. They need to equip people. Literally, this would be the process. And they need to give people space to practice. And people need to be a bit playful. Hey, Anwen, are you still not washing your cup today? Well, I think sometimes we don't have to take things, not everything has to be serious. I would just wish we could have a bit more humor in things and not be so focused on being perfect. So sorry, Anwen. Yesterday, I told you to wash up your cup. Somebody told me that wasn't actually your cup. I'm so sorry. Your next coffee's on me. I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
I made a mistake. I got it wrong. Let me make up for it. And again, let's just have more conversations. I don't need to send you an email that can be misconstrued. I think the figure is like 40% of the tones of email are misunderstood. I can just go over and tell you, or I could pick up the phone. It's more conversations. It's understanding how to do it, how to be polite, and it's getting the intention right and the tone right with people. You're going to say maybe basic people skills, and I'm going to say yes, but they're underused and we need to practice them. So that's what I think organizations can do to make this change.
And it's that intentional element, isn't it? I think that's a really critical part of it. And especially if you're going into trying to upskill people to do this better, to be really honest do you know what? We know people aren't having just general conversations with each other that will really help us be more effective around here and have a nicer place to work in. That means we want to help you to have better conversations, but also it's going to be safe when you do that. And we're going to be able to help people when they hit moments of conflict. Because sometimes when you start practicing this stuff, this is when the conflict stuff kicks in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But people think conflict is bad. And of course it can be.
Yeah, it can be.
But actually, it can be really useful and beneficial. Like the advantages of having a little bit of conflict, a little bit of argument, a little bit of pushback, I think is illuminating for lots of reasons. And not that I want people to be having punch up in an organization, but I'd love people to be having more robust conversations, because I think everybody would benefit. And sometimes I see kind of this pushback between senior managers and, say, first line managers who are more in the Gen Z area. And we have some of those tropes about the different generations and so on. But some of it, I wish, is if you had more of these robust conversations with each other, you'd be getting different perspectives on what's actually going on. And again, that's prime stomping ground for that low level conflict between your first level managers and your senior leaders. We're all trying to be super polite and professional, and in the gap, we're not dealing with fundamental issues and we're limiting ourselves and the organization.
Yeah. And that's why it's important as a way forwards for the HR strategy is actually you're really going to struggle to do lots of things in the organization where people aren't having effective day-to-day conversations with each other.
100% agreement from me on that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us about this topic of low-level conflict?
And when I could talk about this topic all day and all the adjacent topics on it, my final word on it for everybody, for me, for you, for anybody listening, for anybody in organizations is please have more conversations. That's my bottom line. It's basic, but it works and it makes a massive difference.
Yeah. Practicing the I know you mentioned role modeling, but I think that knock-on effect of demonstrating the value of doing these things is so important. And as an HR leader or anybody in that HR space, actually practicing that and demonstrating its ability and its value is very, very useful. Very useful. Okay, so one last question for you. What do you think would be one thing that HR leaders could do to ensure that their HR strategy is really effective?
Listen to people across all levels of the organization in the norm and as you make changes and shifts as well. Listening is key, and we don't do it enough in life and in work in every facet. We're not listening enough to what's going on.
I love that. It's so critical to conversations as well, isn't it? The listening mode of where's the intent of this? What's going on here? What do I need to pick up on here that else is going on? I love that element of it. How we're building in genuine listening to the conversations we're having around HR strategy. Fantastic. Love that.
Absolutely. Around what's said and what's not said. And arguably there's more of an art to that. But if you can listen for what people are not saying, that can be very powerful as well.
Love that. Thank you. So, Fiona, where can people find you?
You can find me on my company website, cairnsconsultancy.com. I'm a regular on LinkedIn, so you can find me there as well. I'd love to connect with you and hear from you. And I'm always up for having conversations around these topics, and even more for helping you figure them out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, Fiona's a great follow on LinkedIn, so go and find her on there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Anwen. This has been so much fun. I've loved it. It's gone so fast. Wow.
Yeah, it has. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining this episode of HR Strategy in the Hot Seats. Please leave us a review. Let us know what you think about this episode. What did you think about the topic? If you have any thoughts on topics, themes, questions, guests you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please do let me know. Get in touch with me via LinkedIn or drop me an email at anwen@purpleskyconsulting.co.uk. Hope that you could join us on the next episode, and make sure you share this with any of your network too. Thank you.